here for you. Let your breath come from heaven, fill our hearts with your light. We are here for you. We are here for you. To you our hearts are open, nothing here is hidden. You are our one desire. You alone are holy, only you are worthy. God, let your fire fall down. Let us shout, be your anthem, your renown, fill the sky. We are here for you. We are here for you. Let your word move in power. Let what's dead come to life. We are here for you. We are here for you. To you our hearts are open. Nothing here is hidden. You are our one desire. You alone are holy, only you are worthy. God, let your fire fall down. We welcome you with praise. We welcome you with praise. Almighty God of love, be welcome in this place. We welcome you with praise. We welcome you with praise. Almighty God of love, be welcome in this place. Let every heart adore, let every soul awake. Almighty God of love, be welcome in this place. We welcome you with praise. We welcome you with praise. Almighty God of love, be welcome in this place. You, our hearts are open, nothing here is hidden. You are our one desire. Grito dolor que soy, alabe al Señor con todo mi corazón. De tu grande amor cantaré, tu nombre alabaré. Sale el sol, es un nuevo amanecer. Cantaré a ti otra vez. Sea lo que venga, confiaré en ti. Alabaré en el anochecer. Que todo lo que soy, alabe al Señor con todo mi corazón. De tu grande amor cantaré, tu nombre alabaré. You're rich in love and you're slow to anger. Your name is great and your heart is kind. For all your goodness I will keep on singing. 10,000 reasons for my heart to cry. Bless the Lord. One of the names for God, El Roy, comes from the Old Testament in Genesis 16, and it means you are the God who sees me. I'm not going to go into the full story because it's a long one, but essentially a woman who was enslaved and had been horribly mistreated flees and is just in a really desperate situation. But God finds her and she says, "You are the God who sees me." So we know that the God who created the stars and the heavens and holds the world in his hands also very intimately and deeply knows and cares about his children. I have a maker, he formed my heart before even time began. My life was in his hand. He knows my name. He knows my every thought. He sees each tear that falls and hears me when I call. I have a father. He calls me his own. He'll never leave me, no matter where I go. He knows my name. He knows my every thought. He sees each tear that falls and hears me when I call. He knows my name. He knows my every thought. He sees each tear that falls and hears me when I call. And hears me when I call. He hears me when I call. Amen.
Amen. Would you pray with me? God, we are grateful that you know our names and you know our hearts. That's true for us. That's true for all people because we believe that, Jesus, you love everyone. And so, Jesus, turn our thoughts in light of the reality that we can be known by you. Help us to turn our thoughts as we reflect on the pursuit of justice in our community. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Well, friends, now is the time in our service where we typically, kids might go to their breakout time. Kids, don't go anywhere. Stay with us. But it is our time where we dialogue with one another. And so here's this opening question that I invite you to think about and then respond. So unmute yourself and share. But here's the question. Think about a time when you experienced a new place or a group of people for the first time. What was your experience like? So go ahead, think for maybe 15 or so seconds, and then looking for maybe 2 people to share with us your answer. I'll share one as you think about it. I think about a time that I experienced a new place and a new group of people. It was when I spent as a college sophomore. I spent time in Philly living and working, and I've shared a bit about how formational that summer was for me, but not knowing anyone and trying to even get around the L in Philly was a very, I felt like this very much a country girl in the middle of a city and not knowing how to get from point A to point B. And so for me, that was a time in which I experienced something new, a new place, a new experience, and it was very disorienting for me. Maybe one or two other brave people who want to share their answer to this question.
I grew up overseas, and so went to college here in the United States, and that was, yeah, I'd been in the States on and off, but as my, obviously it's new for everybody, and me coming in from more of a, yeah, Catholic culture into college, I was able to connect with a Christian group, and the first couple weeks, just connecting with everybody and the new friends, got to meet Amanda here, but for me, it was like meeting all these Christians. I couldn't believe it. It's like the the most Christian place I've ever been, and everybody else is going into the, it's a secular school, and everybody was kind of going through different experiences and processing emotion differently. But for me, I was like, wow, I'm like, so charged up. This place is great for my soul compared to other people.
Thanks, Rob. Maybe one other person wants to share about a time you experienced something new and what it was like.
Well, because I'm thinking that we're talking about refugees and so forth today, I was thinking about being in Shanghai and Ron going to work and going out by myself on public transportation and finding my way around, not knowing the language, not really knowing the culture. And I remember walking in a town, I don't really know where I was, and people just kept approaching me. And one guy wanted a lock of my hair because it's well, it's not wavy today, but it's usually wavy. And they have straight hair, and I just was a little uncomfortable because he wanted to cut my hair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Patty. Well, I'm really excited for Andy to be sharing with us. He's the new, he's newer to the role at Church World Service, but he's not new to working with refugee and immigrant neighbors. So Andy is a friend of the Brickners, and so that's been fun. But Andy really has spent the last almost decade trying to make connections with our neighbors throughout the city and beyond. And so, Andy, I'm just going to talk you up for a few minutes before you get started. But Andy has had experience, even if you have come to any of the bridge experiences that Mustafa has led when we were at the Lemon House specifically, you may have met Andy there because Andy kind of helped support and empower Mustafa through the start of that. And so Andy has a good heart. Him and his wife, Hillary, along with their two boys, live in the Lancaster community. And Andy comes from an Anabaptist tradition as well. And so he is from our theological stream, but he's doing really important work now as community and faith-based engagement specialist for Church World Service. And he's not sharing this morning just because he's a friend of our family, but this is a process that started last summer, which conversation with the then person who was in Andy's current role. And there's a few of you that are gathered with us this morning, and a few who have a few other things going on this morning that they can't be with us today. But a few people say, you know what, I might actually be interested in walking alongside our refugee and immigrant neighbors through a welcome team. And so we are now at a point as we're into 2021 where we're Branch and Vine, we're taking our next steps to take this seriously, to be a loving neighbor to refugee and immigrant neighbors among us. And so I'm going to let Andy share with us a bit about Church World Service. If you don't know, they're not too far from the mix. either. So their office, although they're not currently in person in their office, is next to Tabor as well on King Street. So not too far from the mix either. So Andy, thank you so much for sharing with us this morning about Church World Service, and then also what it looks like to become a welcome team.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Heather. Hope everyone can hear me okay. Maybe thumbs up. Okay, great. Yeah, it's hard to know where to begin, to be honest. This is week 8 or 9 for me in this new position at Church World Service, and I believe this might be my very first Sunday morning presentation. So congratulations on the guinea pig status. I have just absolutely loved to watch Branch and Vine grow from day one. I feel like I was on the periphery watching as in my previous life, meeting a brand new coworker about 5 years ago named Micah Brickner, and he was telling me about how his family were going to start this church plant in Lancaster, and it was going to be called Branch and Vine. And so it's been fascinating to see the things that God has done through Branch and Vine, through your community, and how he has convicted clearly your hearts and your mission for reaching out to the broader Lancaster community. Transitioning into this new role, one of my tasks is to lay the groundwork, especially for finding folks primarily out of church groups to form welcome teams to partner with CWS. CWS Lancaster, yes, does share a building with Tabor, and I think they're merging with LHOP, if I'm not mistaken. And our corner of in our corner of the world, what we have done now for the last 34 years have welcomed refugees, immigrants, and asylum seekers into the Lancaster community. And that has taken many shapes and forms and sizes, as you can imagine, over those 34 years. And I believe it is one of the reasons why, and I don't know if this is still true today, it's 2021, this was true back in 2017. But I will run with this statistic until I'm told not to. But it is because of the welcoming community. It is because of organizations like Church World Service and the churches that have rallied around CWS in the past to help welcome refugees and immigrants. We have this very unique, fascinating status within the country. When I say we, I mean Lancaster County. We have become what some would call the refugee capital of the United States, because as of even a few years ago, we were resettling more refugees per capita than any other county in the United States, which might seem fascinating because we're Lancaster, right? We're not New York City, we're not Chicago or Baltimore, we're Lancaster. And so I think what's fascinating to me is Lancaster has always been, even from its founding 300 years ago, a place of refuge. Some of you may be even able to trace ancestral roots back to that welcoming spirit. And so when talking about refugees and immigrants, asylum seekers, there's sort of one of two ways I can approach this. And I didn't actually land on one in particular, so I'll just do both. One of the ways that I could do it is sort of go through the list of biblical imperatives that we are given in both the Old and New Testament, right? That specifically call the followers of God to reach out to the foreigner, to the alien, or the person that is in exile in their midst. Whether it's Jesus commanding his disciples to do that, whether it's God commanding the people of Israel to do that. I could go into areas where central biblical figures were themselves refugees, and there are a lot more than you might realize. We have clearly heard one of the first biblical lines, I guess you could say, lines of dialogue that addresses this very issue this morning, in that you are the God who sees me. Who was Hagar? She was someone who was fleeing from a very oppressive situation. And she was found by God, and what she says is that you are the God who sees me. And so when I think of the refugees and immigrants that we are able to welcome into our community, who are fleeing very similar situations, we need to remember that they too are people who God sees. The other route I could go is presenting you with statistics, which can be overwhelming, and yeah, just a lot to take in, about how 79.5 million people around the world are displaced at this very moment, which is twice the amount from just a decade ago. And well over half of those people are under the age of 18. Fleeing violence, persecution, even natural disaster, violation of human rights. Individuals all over the globe are being forced to flee their homes and find new places to call home. And fascinatingly, so many of them get to call Lancaster our home. And I remember, I just want to make sure I've got my timer here, excuse me. I can remember being at Branch and Vine. I think it was on Lemon Street when you folks did a bridge meal. That was, I don't know, a couple years ago now. 2 years ago? Wow. And I can remember there was this Somali gentleman. It wasn't Mustafa, but it was a gentleman that he brought. And I still remember his story that he shared with you all. He talked about how when he and his family had to flee Somalia and flee to Kenya into a refugee camp, that there was a representative from the United Nations who had come to their house and gave them a baby tree. And this gentleman, who was a kid at the time, maybe 10 years old, he said to the UN worker, "Why are you giving us this? We're not going to be here that long." And I remember him telling the story about how by the time that they did get resettled, by the time they were able to leave the refugee camp and get resettled to Lancaster, they were climbing that tree as full-grown adults. And so I think we need to realize that every refugee, every immigrant that we are able to welcome into our community holds very similar stories of waiting and hoping. And at the end of the day, knowing that refugees are human beings with dreams and aspirations, hopes and fears for their lives. The goal and the hope for Church World Service in partnership with churches is basically giving individuals an opportunity to flourish in their new cultural setting where they don't know the language, don't know the culture. And so actually, I don't know, Heather, if you had the 2 pictures there. These are actually refugees from our community who have called this place home and who are often marginalized in terms of the broader society, but yet they contribute so much to us. And so there are various ways of involvement, various ways to get engaged with this kind of work, but particularly with welcome teams. I think it's key to know what it is that we're talking about necessarily. And a disclaimer, we are being told, we as in CWS are being told by both our national office and the State Department to expect a very significant increase in refugees being resettled in the next 12 to 18 months. There will be many policy changes here in the coming weeks that will open up the opportunity for folks to come from countries that were previously banned, whether that be Syria, Iraq, or Somalia, Afghanistan, or Yemen. So CWS has this opportunity now to welcome possibly more people than they ever have. And so we cannot do that without community involvement. It is just not possible. When refugees come, they look for employment and housing. So we work with local employers and local landlords who are sympathetic to renting to refugees. But primarily church groups, I think, is one of the areas that it really hits home the one need, the one central need that refugees have when they're coming into a new community, and that is friendship. We can provide services, but this reconciliation of cultures, this breaking down of barriers between community members, this friendship is just extremely, sometimes maybe even undervalued in our own society, and recognized as a way for refugee communities to flourish themselves. So a welcome team consisting sometimes by about 6 to 8 individuals, certainly can be more. There's various phases in which welcome teams can get involved. One of the ways would be to help set up the apartment that we would, when we find out that there is a family who is about to arrive in the Lancaster community, we will reach out to landlords to see who is available to lease out property. And so we would look to the welcome team, and I would work with the welcome team to come to CWS Lancaster's headquarters to sort of, we have what we call the donation hub, where we have kitchen supplies and school supplies and furniture, and basically is setting up their apartment or house to make it as welcoming as possible. There's also COVID pending, I guess you could say, opportunity to actually go to the airport and greet the refugee family when they arrive. I'm really hoping that we will get to do that someday. And so the commitment from there, so refugees when they're being resettled, there are a lot of expectations, particularly from the State Department, that they have to meet health screenings, enroll children in school. And that's where the welcome team will work with CWS to make sure all of those things can happen, whether it's showing people how to get to the grocery store or how to send a piece of mail. There's just a lot of things that we sometimes maybe even culturally take for granted that are just ingrained in our brains that people are starting over and trying to navigate how to do. And that's where we come in. We are the ones who have been here our entire lives and have the opportunity to really aid in that way. But the ultimate goal, like I said, besides providing services, is being that face-to-face human interaction and connection with the refugee family. We are welcoming them in just as we would welcome Jesus into our midst. And so I encourage you to seriously consider, if this is something that you've wanted to do for a while, that maybe now is the time to possibly get on board. Like I said, we are anticipating a large number of arrivals, numbers that we have not seen maybe in quite some time. So the need for community is going to be greater than ever, but it's going to be, I assure you, an exciting experience. And I don't know how much time I took, but
You're good. No worries. Thank you, Andy. And what we're going to do is I really want us, as you know, over the summer, it was a quick shout out on Facebook to be like, hey, if we would do this, if anybody wants to kind of intentionally walk with our refugee and immigrant neighbors. I don't know about you, but I live in the Southwest. So already when I'm at the playground, there's several that Mike and I have already met that have come through CWS. So you might, your very self, have your next door neighbors or on your block have people that are, within the last few years are new to our community. And so really what I'm inviting you all into and our broader community of faith is to consider joining a mission team. What really is what we're going to commit to, knowing that there are these changes that are coming for our country that will welcome more. The people that Andy had mentioned, those who have been in refugee camps for the majority of their lives, kids who have not known anything else except a refugee camp, will now have the opportunity to start a new life full of hope, but full of still challenges in a new community. So I'm encouraging us to consider what it would look like to join a welcome team from Branch and Vine. I know our community of faith, we place a high value on relationships and not programs. And so placing a high value on building relationships with neighbors is just a really natural way for us to join in with a welcome team. And so I'll be sending out more information this week, but what I'm inviting you to consider is, do you have the ability to commit to 12 months? Basically, Andy would help the welcome team kind of get ramped up, do some training. There is not just oh, hey, go welcome a family, but there is some training to then really for us as a team to commit to 12 months of building relationships. If you have skills such as you know how to sign a kid up at SDUL's headquarters down across from Water Street. We're talking everything from helping to sign up a kid for school, to helping them get to a store, to helping with if they, because this is all about empowering them. This isn't not this Messiah complex of let me show you what it means to be American. No, we're saying we are empowering them. So whatever questions they have, if you can drive someone to a doctor's appointment, whether you have kids at home or not, can you come alongside a mom who's trying to sort out what it means to be a caregiver here in Lancaster City? If you can help, if they say we need help knowing now that we have a job, we need to know how to spend our money. So if you can help someone build a budget, we're looking for people, 6 to 8 people at least, who are willing to say, you know what, I can give of my time. But most importantly, it's coming from a posture of us learning as well, us being formed and discipled by Jesus in this process. Once again, it is, yes, we are welcoming, we are empowering our new neighbors, but we need to realize we're going to experience our own transformation in this process. So at this time, we're going to segue into, we typically have dialogue after our message. And so I'm just curious if you